is Velichko Yanchev. I run CarbonX Capital. We are an early stage investor focused on climate tech. We also help companies with their fundraising needs and scaling their revenue. So I'm going to do a very brief talk about why we're excited about the space and some of the opportunities we see, in particular in Asia Pacific at early stage. So these are the three main reasons, there's many more, as to why we're really excited about the opportunities in climate tech. So number one, large existing markets. Number two, capital availability. And number three, massive tailwinds and catalysts. So I'm focusing here primarily in terms of potential returns, financially speaking. But of course, we all know that if we were to transition to a sustainable economy and reduce CO2 emissions, there's tremendous returns and benefits that we all going to experience as a result of that. But since investors primarily focus on financial returns first, these are the sort of three main things that I think will probably drive asymmetric returns in that space over the next decade. So taking each quickly in turn, large existing markets, pretty obvious that things like energy transportation, food, agriculture, logistics, shipping. These are literally the biggest markets in the world, the biggest addressable markets you can imagine, multi-trillion-dollar opportunities. But more importantly, the demand is basically guaranteed, it's there, right? So unlike other sectors or verticals, you don't have to worry about adoption as much, right? As long as you produce a product that is faster, cheaper, better, easier to use, superior in any way, you're essentially guaranteed demand. You're gonna have customers, and potentially you're even gonna grow the market for them. Capital availability, there's a ton of money, there's a wall of money coming in, it already is, in the public markets as well as the private markets, in huge institutions. So these are just a few examples. On the private side, in the last couple of years, we've seen so-called mega funds from Brookfield, TPG, lower carbon capital, and on the public side, even bigger investors like the likes of Fidelity, BlackRock, T. Rowe Price, etc. Very, very active in the space. And then massive tailwinds. This is just a short list of the various catalysts that we see. But I'm not going to go into too much detail. But number one is huge government spending subsidies. We've all seen the news, various legislation, government spending plans all around the world. So that's a big one. You have cost decline curves. We've seen very, very significant cost declines in things like batteries, energy storage, solar energy generation, and all that. And we think these are driven by things like Rice Law, and we're very confident these are going to continue to decline over time, and they're most likely going to be present in other areas than the one I just mentioned. Then you have commitments to decarbonize from both governments and corporations alike. You've seen, whether it's a whole bunch of cities in Europe announcing, no more gasoline cars by 2030, whether it's Google, Stripe, Microsoft, Amazon pledging that they're going to offset all of their emissions, or they're going to go carbon neutral by a certain date. We've seen that happening more and more. And then there's a fourth reason. It's not really a fourth sort of, reason why we're really excited about that space. It's not easy to quantify or calculate, but it has to do with the people, so that the kind of caliber and talent of people coming into that space. And the reason it's quite simple is because climate change clearly presents one of the biggest challenges, but that also means that it's one of the biggest opportunities. And the biggest opportunities, the biggest challenges tend to attract the smartest people, the smartest and most capable people. They not only want to pursue financial rewards, but they also want to have meaning and impact in what they do. And so we think a lot of them, and we're seeing a lot of them going in that space, and we think that's also going to drive asymmetric returns financially as a result. Speaking of opportunities, we think there's a big one in APAC. It's interesting, so in a couple of reports over the last couple of years we've reviewed that there's quite a big gap between Asia Pacific, excluding China in particular, and US and Europe. So from second half 2020 until first half of 2021, something like 3% or less of the global amount of money in climate tech, which was about 88 billion in that period, was invested in APAC, so 96% plus, essentially in three places: Europe, US, and China. And then similarly, 2020, depending on which report and what data points you're looking at, global money invested in that space. So that's everything from very early stage all the way through to pre-IPO and SPACs, somewhere in the region of 75 to like 85 billion. And again, well over 90% is just in two regions, North America and US. So we think there's tremendous opportunity in Asia. It's APAC excluding China has something like 40% of the world's population. Huge amount of GDP, so there's clearly a mismatch, and I think that gap's going to close, and there's going to be a lot more money coming into that space. There's a huge funding gap in terms of emissions, or the sectors producing emissions, and the money going into the various sectors that constitute climate change. So something like 85% of the emissions, or the sectors, or the startups that operate in sectors that represent 85% of the emissions, in 2021 they received 39% of the funding, and the number for 2022 is something like 50%. So it's trending positively, but there's still a very, very big gap. Essentially, something like half the money is going into transportation, EVs, which is essentially played out from an early stage VC perspective. And then there's a whole host of other sectors and opportunities that have to decarbonize, have to become greener, and represent the vast majority, the 80+% of emissions that are very, very underfunded. And again, that's where the opportunity lies, that's where we tend to focus on, and that's where we want to be a part of the solution. So I'll stop here. If you'd like to learn more, reach out, come speak to me or Levine, or reach out by email, by social media. If you want to find out more about how you can be part of the solution, how you can be interested in making an impact, you can come and speak to us. This is not a pitch for us, but we are actively investing in that space. We're raising funds, so if you want to learn more, speak to us. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the night.